Welcome to Pre-Shift, tidbits of wisdom for everyday service. My name is TJ Griffin, and I'm the corporate wine educator for Winebow. We encourage your questions, comments at any point during the webinar. Please use the Q&A rather than the chat bar. Let me introduce your host for today. Master Sommelier Ron Edwards is the husband of one wife, the father of 5 girls, a surfer, and a missionary kid. He has almost 30 years of hospitality experience, and since 2018, he has been the director of wine education for Winebow. And now here to discuss today's topic, supporting post-nominals, Master Sommelier Ron Edwards.
Well, hello, TJ Griffin and everybody in the audience. Hope we're all doing well. It's a beautiful day in Richmond, blue skies, crisp fall-like weather. You know, it's one of those mornings you walk out and you go, football. I love it. How are you doing up there in New Jersey?
Yeah, it's a very similar day. Crisp. The leaves all of a sudden decided they were going to start falling a day or two ago. So we'll see if they get all on the ground by the time brush pickup comes.
That would be very handy. It is always frustrating when only a part of them fall and you got to wait another however long, depending on your municipality, before the next leaf pickup comes along. In northern Michigan, we were very, very fortunate. You just raked them out to the side of the road and they would come by and suck them up with one of those giant, yard waste vacuum cleaners. But here in Richmond, you have to either put them in your trash can or transport them off or whatever. It's mulching time around here. You just run the mower right over top of them.
Yes, that's one way to do it.
Yes, because it's too much trouble to have the trash pickup. All right, so let's talk post-nominals. And for those in the audience who are like, post-nominals, what the heck are you talking about? That's all those things that append people's names like PhD and MBA and all of those certifications and degrees that give you some sort of status in the world of education or in a profession. A very common post-nominal in the world of business is CPA, Certified Public Accountant, things like that. And in hospitality and in the wine trade, we have our own set, which I was reflecting on with TJ, that they could be interpreted otherwise, right? Like is a certified wine educator. You could make up all kinds of things that CWE means. I think TJ has one that he has a duplicate of interesting note.
Yeah, well, the prerequisite for CWE is the CSW, Certified Specialist of Wine, but that is also a perhaps more popular post-nominal for Certified Social Worker.
Well, there you go.
Which I am not.
Well, no, but we do a lot of social work in the world of wine, but not the important work that they do. And so, the value of the certification is the topic of our discussion today. From the perspective of the business, and we can get into a little bit of the perspective of the individual seeking the certification, but normally that value is already established in the mind of the person seeking it because that's why they're going out and looking for it. The big question becomes, what do we do with it as business owners, as hospitality managers, as retail managers in the world of wine? How do we approach these certifications, post-nominals in our businesses? And is there, what's the value proposition of us supporting them other than going, yeah, go get that? I mean, and I'm talking about support, I'm talking about financial support and emotional and time support and encouragement to go out and do these things. So the kinds of certifications that we're talking about is a fairly long list, but a short subset would be the WSET programs, starting with 1, going all the way to the MW, the certified, the Court of Master Sommeliers, intro course, certified, advanced, and then the Master Sommelier exam, certified wine educator, and TJ brought up the other one, the certified specialist of wine. There's one that's known to me called the French Wine Scholar, which they have the offshoots of the Italian Wine Scholar and the Spanish Wine Scholar. There's the International Sommelier Guild, and the list goes on. And so how do they fit into the business of retail and on-premise is the question we're going to address today.
So Ron, I gotta believe you've gotten this question because I have many, many times. Which one's the best?
Oh, that's such a dangerous question. TJ, don't be mean to me like that. Which one's the best? The one I have, of course, no.
Right.
There is value in all of these, absolutely value in all of these. And it's not really about best and worst. It's about what do you want to do with it as an individual? So for instance, TJ is pursuing the MW. He's well into it. He's passed sections and he's working on it further. I'm a Master Sommelier. I found value in that pursuit. TJ was better suited to the WSET programming because of what he's doing. And, you know, my original career was hospitality. So it made a lot of sense for me to stay in the Master Sommelier vein because it was taking all of this wine information and applying it to service. But in the wholesale and retail trade, maybe it makes more sense to be in WSET. It also depends on how you want to study. Each of these programs has a particular style of approach to studying the information, what's important. And then finally, assessment of wine varies in the whole tasting aspect between each of these programs to a certain degree. And that also comes into play with what you as an individual find valuable. The last conversation about that is, what do you want out of it? If marketability of the certification is your goal, then some of these are going to be better than others because some are more well-known than others. The whole world knows about the WSET. The majority of the wine world knows about the Court of Master Sommeliers. And some of the other programs are still on the growth curve. If your goal is to learn and therefore add knowledge and become a more holistic professional, then they all have merit because they're all putting you in a position where you need to be learning something, and learning is what makes you better. So TJ, did I avoid the disastrous pitfall of picking one in particular?
Yes, you did that very well.
Excellent.
And I agree with what you said. There's a lot of very valid programs, and you have to sort of begin with the end in mind. Where do you want to go? And that may change during your journey. I've seen people change, right?
Yeah, absolutely. TJ, you started taking CMS courses. You got to the certified. Always a fun memory. I was your examiner all those years ago. And then you changed gears. You're like, okay, this is great, but this is not the direction I really want to go long term. And that was fine, right? And other people go the other way. And then I know people who just have like a multitude of things they've done, and they just feel like everything's of value, and keeping their nose in the books, so to speak, it just means good things will come. And so they do multiples. You know, there's quite a few of my colleagues who are Master Sommeliers who also have like the CWE and a few other post-nominals that they drag along with them as well. It's all good stuff. All right, so why are we really bringing certifications to the table, and what do they bring to the table? And the most important aspect of certifications is the study that goes into them prior to taking the exams. So the exams are one part, and then there's the journey going in. So as I prepared for each level of my particular organization's examinations, I was constantly improving my base of knowledge on the subject matter that was part and parcel to making money in my trade, which was selling wine to guests in a dining room. And then, so every time I learned something, it made me better at my job today. And so certifications have the game of studying along the path. Post examination, you have the benefit of being able to promote that you don't just say you know some stuff, a third party says you know some stuff. And the other really important factor here is that and I think TJ can coincide with this, I think that he will have his own testament to this statement, and that is the post benefit and the journey benefit is incrementally added confidence that you gain throughout the process that then is sort of slightly multiplied by actually achieving the certification, passing the exam, and getting the slip of paper or the lapel pin or whatever it is that says you did it. It changes your confidence level about the subject matter and how you deal with it. TJ, did you experience that sort of incrementally as you went through each of these various programs?
Yeah. Absolutely. Although there was time I wasn't aware of it. And then, after several years of studying in various, paths, it hit me like, wow, I actually do know a few things. I don't know everything. And I think the typical journey is the more you learn, the more you realize you still have a lot to learn.
Yeah.
But there was a point where I was just, nosed in the books for so long. And then I picked my head up and took a breath and said, wow, reflecting back, I said, wow, I've really made a lot of progress.
Yes, those moments when you look in the mirror, this is very comparative to you wake up one morning and you look in the mirror and you go, who's that person in the mirror? I still see myself as like whatever 10 years ago or whatever. And you look in the mirror and go, what happened? Where did all that gray hair come from? It's very similar process in learning because it's incremental. And sometimes it's not you that sees it, it's other people see it in you and the way you change and behave and do things. And hopefully those are for positive reasons. We're going to talk about that later. But I was just sort of reflecting here as we were talking about this, and confidence is not the only benefit of this journey. And so we'll hit that as we go. So, why is confidence to me the most important benefit? And that is really based on the whole point of any of this. Unless you're one of the highly interested consumers of wine that actually doesn't work in the wine business, because there are plenty of those. Like TJ, several people that are even pursuing up through the MW, the Master of Wine, who really don't work in the trade, right? They're just really interested consumers.
Right. Which is amazing to me.
Yeah, that really is an obsessive level of information for someone who's not planning to use it professionally, but they feel so much better about this passionate subject that they're pursuing, makes them a better buyer of what they like and don't like, and as a consumer. But in general, we're all doing this professionally because we want to be better at our jobs. And our job, boil it down however you want. If you work in the hospitality trade or the retail trade, our job is to sell things in one form or another. And so confidence is one of those most important ingredients to overcoming buyer confidence, meaning the person you're selling to has a lack of confidence in what you're trying to sell, and it has to be overcome. And the wineries are doing that by label design and advertising and what's written on the back label and all of that stuff. Wholesalers are doing that with, neck tags that give scores and the little talking points that we put underneath labels on retail. And we overcome that hopefully by having pre-shift meetings with staff and talking to them about the wines we're selling them and giving them a little piece of information. But really, to overcome buyer confidence issues, it really takes someone who's selling the wine. The reason we're giving all of those things to people is that we need people who are confident about this item, that I feel good about this item in your world, meaning I'm talking to you, John or Jane or Susie or whoever, and I think that based on what you've told me, this is a great wine for you. And my confidence as the person selling it is a huge ingredient in overcoming their hesitancy. And so as we gain confidence through our knowledge base and feeling more comfortable with the wine world in general, which is an enormous subject, we start to overcome that hesitancy. And when we start to overcome that hesitancy, we create a better experience for the person buying wine. And when we create a better experience for the person buying wine, we end up selling more wine to that person over the course of time. Sometimes it's not immediate, right? So you gotta build confidence and trust one conversation at a time, but especially if you have regular guests in a restaurant, that information that you can share with them along the way is going to make them more and more comfortable with your suggestions, which will eventually give them more and more comfortability to explore. And once in a while, you'll be able to maybe expand their price point a little bit. But even if you don't, you're going to keep them as a regular guest who keeps coming back and talking to you and buying more wine. In the retail space, comfortability and confidence will turn your person who buys wine in several locations to like, I know I'll only buy wine in 2 locations, yours and then the convenience purchase because I just don't have time to go to the retail shop, that sort of thing. Or maybe they turn it into all one location because it has both convenience and knowledge attached. So confidence is just a huge thing. And the other interesting part about confidence is it allows, you have that when you don't know much about a subject matter, you're very concerned to walk into a conversation that will expose the fact that you don't know much about that subject matter. And most frontline employees will feel that the person sitting in front of them knows more about wine than they do. And that is not the design of hospitality. That in the greatest sense, hospitality means the person taking care of you knows more about this contained environment than I do. They know their food better than I do. They know their beverages better than I do. They know their methodologies better than I do. And I'm just here to relax. In a retail setting, you do have a finite number of wines that you're responsible for. If it's a very large retailer, then you have the store is broken up into a set of specialists, for lack of a better description, in a lot of cases. And I manage this section and you manage that section. And your idea there is I'm going to be an expert for my guest, for my client in this space. And confidence and knowledge together make that possible, and it increases sales in the process. And then the last part is that fully engaging idea. If you're really going to fully engage with a client, you've got to have the confidence that you can participate in the conversation in a positive way and keep the conversation going and not lose the trust. And sometimes that means that you look at them and go, I'm not sure. I don't know the answer to that question. And you might know more of that than I do, but I'm willing to walk over here to the computer and look it up with you. You can't do that in a restaurant, but you can do it in a retailer. But we never want to pretend that we know something, because we all carry those devices around in our pockets that make it so your guest can look it up while you're standing there. I have had that happen. I've been talking about a wine in a restaurant. Somebody pulls out their phone and looks up what I was just talking about and then says something about it. Usually it was like, oh, I see that. You're right. I'm like, yep. I'm glad you checked. But in short, confidence builds trust, and confidence comes from comfortability with the material, and that comes from knowledge base.
Ron, we have a question from David.
Sweet.
In your experience, do restaurants prefer credentials from any particular organization? And do they, whether or not they admit it, require credentials as a condition of employment?
Well, I'm not sure I wish that. I would like to think that I wish that restaurants required credentials for certain jobs. Like if you're going to hire somebody as your sommelier and you're going to give them that title, it'd be really nice if they had a wine certification to back it up. Preferably one with sommelier in the title, right? So that you know that they have gone through a process to have a base of knowledge that represents their job. In the real world and in the old world, sommelier was a function more than a title. And most of the time you learned it on the job, because so many of the trades of Europe and of the United States, especially in this sort of thing, were things you worked your way into through mentorship. And in the modern world, we sort of circumvent that, go get an education, and work really hard and learn something and show up. In the hospitality trade, we have a bad habit of being understaffed and hiring the next warm body up. We also have a terrible habit of someone in the organization saying to anybody that's willing to take the job, yeah, you run the beverage program. It's not that hard. And it is very, very hard. So David, if you run a restaurant or have influence over your organization, then I would suggest that you start having the conversation about what do we want on the resume and the skill set of someone who's going to be called sommelier? What do we want on the resume or the skill set who someone's going to be called general manager? And actually start hiring people by skill set rather than by availability. And I think that will change everything. And then that will make the decision for you and your organization as to whether or not you think it's important for someone to have, for instance, the certified sommelier certification if they're going to be your floor sommelier, or one from the International Sommelier Guild. Or do you want them to learn on the job from somebody who's going to mentor them? Because that is also a legitimate path. TJ, do you think I answered that question? I feel like I kind of went all over the place there.
Yeah, I've definitely seen ads in trade publications that said advanced sommelier required, or something like that. So it depends on the restaurant and the size, and the budget. And again, like you said, how much do they value it? How much does the business owner value that?
And so I guess I'll follow up with, it's becoming more and more common than it was when I began in the hospitality trade. When I began, most people didn't even know what a sommelier was, much less if anyone had the title. And yes, I'm that old. Or actually, no, it's just that the US has progressed that quickly. And the movie Somm did huge things for people who want to make being a sommelier your profession, and turned it into a profession. When I was you did something else, like you were the general manager, and then when service started, you also played the role of sommelier. That's how it worked for most people, and honestly today it still does, but I'd like to help change that through the course of time. And I think that if we started, summary statement, all other professions have a minimum education requirement for the profession. It's in the job description. Minimum bachelor's degree, minimum master's degree, minimum doctor's degree, depending on right. Some professions do not require a post high school degree because it's kind of a mentor trainee trade, and they just need to know that you can learn something, and then they're going to teach you what to do. And so why should the hospitality profession be any different, right? If you're going to hire somebody who's supposed to be a manager of the financial side of the restaurant, you would like to know that they actually have the ability to do that. Same thing with sommeliers. Subject matter on, shall we?
Yes.
All right. This is important information because what we're talking about here is the attitude of businesses. So David, this may actually even address your question even further, because what I having had many conversations in my consulting days with business owners about supporting post-nominals, supporting certification programs within their businesses. In other words, having a proactive plan to support people along the way, both financially and with encouragement to go get these certifications, just like you would if somebody in the corporate world sponsored your MBA, knowing that in that sponsorship, they're going to benefit from your degree program. All right, so that's a nervous thing for the very cash dependent, expensive world of hospitality. It's a difficult conversation in some retail environments where people don't work a lot on the floor with the actual clients. It's more of a, here's our wines, come get them if you want. That's a very difficult place to have this conversation. But if you have a structure in your retail organization that you do interact with the customer, you do walk out and try and help them find things, then this is a perfect conversation for them. The idea here is that there's so much nervousness over investing in people and then them leaving. That makes sense to you, right, TJ? You're asking me to put $1,000 towards this person's education. What if they leave next week? Okay. And I understand that, having been a small business owner, having been the manager of two different small restaurants by the concept of corporate versus independent, that idea is nerve-wracking. We just need a paradigm shift as to what we think the benefit really is of the certification within our context. And I think the paradigm shift changes the way you approach it completely, and you feel a lot better about it and actually get to the point where you're like, well, why wouldn't I do this? For however long it takes someone to achieve the certifications that they seek in their incremental increase, So while they're doing it, there is this constant incremental increase in expertise. And that constant intermittent increase in expertise is an everyday benefit to the business. Every time they come to work, they're a little bit smarter, quote unquote, a little bit more prepared, a little bit more informed about what they're really supposed to be doing. And while that person invests their time in the subject, the benefits to the business are immediate because the knowledge gain is immediate. So we don't want to see these efforts in supporting post-nominals and education as, well, it only benefits me after they get their degree or their certification or their lapel pin or whatever. That is just not the case. It benefits you every day, and the certification is a journey, not a destination. I would say that in my own experience, the restaurants I worked for while I worked to become a Master Sommelier had the benefit of, when I first started, I was not a sommelier at all. I was somebody who was given the responsibility of a wine program who did not deserve it. I did not have the knowledge to build a wine program, except I was super interested and enthusiastic. And then within 1 year, I had a certification that said, I'm a little more prepared to do this. And then after another year, I had a certification that said, wow, you've learned a ton, and now you are well qualified to do this. And then there was the rest of the journey through the MS program, and every day was progress most of the time. And so every day, my restaurant owners got the benefit of someone who was working steadily to become a better professional. I was not a perfect professional. Sometimes I had some serious flaws, but between management coaching and everyday work experience, you get through that. So that process gives you this person that's coming in your door brimming with enthusiasm over something that they have researched or studied recently, ready to seek it out, ready to talk to other people about it, hoping to sell something like that from your shelves or menu items. And this is absolute gold. That enthusiasm for the subject matter is infectious to fellow employees and to your clients, because it just is that people want to be excited. People want to have the barriers come down so that they can explore, and enthusiasm and confidence are the two things that do it better than anything else. The other thing is they're really going to be open to a state of welcoming new conversations. So somebody wants to engage them in something, they're more likely to engage because they're adding confidence every day that they have something to say on the subject matter. There are times when the enthusiasm is going to need a little professional coaching. It certainly had that issue in my world. I can remember many times as I was maturing as a professional, I can look back and go, wow, I wish I hadn't had that conversation because it was just overkill. But, I'd rather coach someone who's enthusiastic than figuring out how to coach someone who's crusty and jaded.
Ron, I just have a couple of questions for you here that sort of built up as you were talking. So the first thing is full disclosure, I've never owned a restaurant, so I sympathize. I've run restaurants, but I know how tough it can be. So I understand some reticence about investing, but I think it is somewhat short-sighted because for a few reasons. If you have a person that's interested and enthusiastic about pursuing this, chances are they're in this for the long haul, right? They're not doing this while they, take acting lessons or, or finish school or whatever. This is becoming a profession for them. So you might have them for quite a while. And if you're not going to invest in them, you might lose them anyway, because they might have an opportunity to go somewhere else where someone else will invest in them. And I also think, if you think about, do you ever have a charity mailing where they send you some pens or a calendar, there's some science behind that. If you've ever heard of Dr. Robert Cialdini, who studies the psychology of influence, really interesting stuff about how when we give someone something, there's a basic human need to repay that. And I would think that the majority of people, if you're going to invest in them and help them
Mhm.
through their program, they're going to have a strong sense of I need to repay that with my service, my knowledge, my tenure, my
Mhm.
whatever it may be. Not everybody can't. This isn't a blanket statement, but I think the majority of people will feel uh, that they owe a debt to the business.
I completely agree with that. And yes, his work is fascinating. I haven't delved into it much, but I've heard of it through other things that I listen to, and that's absolutely true. And I know that at least in my case, his work applies to me. When someone does something nice for me or gives me something, I definitely feel a need to give back to them. And was there also that was a great statement. Was there a question in there too, or do we
Yeah,
want
well,
to?
that leads to talking about enthusiasm. Can sometimes be over enthusiastic, sometimes overconfident. I'll tell the very short version of the story. Soon after I got my certified sommelier, soon after meeting you, and I had my CSW at the time too. So they both had pins. So I was on a
Mhm.
supplier side at a trade show up in Maine, and a very nice gentleman came over, introduced himself, was asking about the pins, and I may have explained it to him as you would explain it to a small child about what the programs were. And after I'd finished this somewhat patronizing explanation, he gave me his business card and said, if I can help in any way. And he was a master sommelier who I think lives near you, where you are now. A very nice guy, and I still cringe thinking about it. We talked about it
So
afterwards.
so you met Robert Jones, did you?
Yes, I did, and very nice. But he did not make me feel. He did not smack me down as he could have. But there is a danger of being a little overconfident, and I think in wine, uh, maybe this sentence is truer than in many other areas. A little knowledge is a dangerous thing, and people want to share it. So how do you curb that? How do you rein that in?
Yeah, there's some pre-shift episodes about this that are really poignant, and they apply to me personally in the way I learned through hard knocks. But in general, we have to, as managers and owners, not be afraid to intervene in the enthusiasm and remind them the purpose of their job and what they're supposed to be doing with the client base. And the most important thing they're not supposed to be doing, don't ever let your enthusiasm brim over to the point that you think you should tell people what they should like. That's not what it's for. Never let your enthusiasm brim over to the point that you now start judging other people's taste as subordinate to yours. No, can't do that either. And these are fairly obvious things that you have to stay in the rails, right? You have to stay in the rails of why is knowledge important. And knowledge is important so that you can help this person get the wine they like. And it may be that the wine they like is exactly what they asked you for, brand and grape variety. It may be that through use of knowledge and enthusiasm, you can say, yeah, we have that. And it's right here. And you'd like this really a lot. And, if you want to try something new, great. And it may be even a deeper conversation than that. But if we allow our enthusiasm to become too self-confident, which happens with everybody eventually in a subject matter, then we go outside those rails and we have to put ourselves back on the track. And managers and peers, that's your job. Keep people on track with that. It's a tough job sometimes, and it depends on the personality. But done in the concept of for the guest's happiness, we need to do this. Then you're not necessarily attacking the person. You're reminding them of what their real job is, and we should never be afraid to do that for each other. I wish people had been more direct with me along the way. I would have maybe not had some of those instances of thinking I was being helpful when I was actually not helpful at all. So possible paths, this is a great image that sort of reinforces that there's not one path to chase certifications and knowledge in the world of wine and spirits and beers. And there's also not one path for the business owner or the managers to support it. So let's just take, this is just 4 concepts, and they could branch out into a bunch of different scenarios. And I'll give you a couple of examples along the way of people I've seen use this well. So first of all, there's the scholarship fund concept, which is the business allocates a certain amount of dollars every year that will be given under the concept of education, certifications, right? And it could be, and the other thing is, you know, if you're running a hospitality business, then let's do this for both the front of the house and the back of the house, right? Having a better informed chef is a great thing too. And that the best way to do this is not to just have the funds available, have somebody apply, go, yeah, you're worthy, and off you go. But the best way to do this is to have some sort of yes, you apply for it, to say, yes, I'd like to get this certification, but in order to get the funds, you have to go through some sort of pre-planning process where maybe you come to class once a week with the training manager on that concept. The sommelier teaches a wine class every week for 10 weeks and preps you for the course. And then evaluate that person to see if they're ready for this certification, so that you as a business are not wasting money on someone who isn't really ready and just thought they were. Because there's a lot of people who go out chasing certifications and think that they have the level of knowledge necessary, and then they get to the exam and they go, oh, there's more out there than I knew. And the downsides of this is it requires you as a business to have a structured approach with probably an evaluation exam of your own. This has been a very successful process for the Angus Barn in Raleigh, North Carolina. This is how they do it. The wine director for the business has a class leading up to any kind of leading up to their participation in the introductory sommelier course every year and the certified sommelier exam. And those who pass his test and come to his classes, you have to come to the class, you can't skip, got to show up every time, and you have to pass his exam, which is sometimes harder than ours. Then he says, all right, now we'll pay for you to go to the exam. That's safe and effective. Full reimbursement after passing is another option. Say, okay, we have a pile of money set aside in our budget that employees can apply for. They are allowed to go take the certifications without our interference, and we will reimburse them when they achieve the certificate. So the employee pays up front, and the business pays in the back at full reimbursement. That's how Winebow works. There's a pool of funds that when it's out, but the idea here is we can't watch you to make sure you're prepared, but you putting your money up front and you're not going to get it back if you don't succeed makes people study. And then there's this other option of co-sponsorship, which is very similar to full reimbursement. You just don't have full reimbursement. And this is where I still recommend the employee pays up front, and then a percentage of it is reimbursed upon passing. This way, there's skin in the game. When people put their money on the line, they tend to be more motivated about the process and be a lot less likely to put off studying and preparing. Then there's the option for large companies. If you're out there and you work for one of the hospitality corporations, or maybe you work for that matter, another distributor or wholesale company, large companies can actually create their own private courses through some of these. Like I know the WSET does this, where you can set your business up as a training center, and you can invite your team to come to your own training center or go to a digital footprint training center in the modern world, where they can take these courses and these exams, and you can push quantities of people through the process. When you do it this way, it pushes down the incremental cost of per person, and it creates a lot of camaraderie among the group of people in your business that have gone through it together, sort of like Pledge Week of sorts. And it offers the opportunity of a large celebration. TJ, any of these identify with you, or you have some ideas that I didn't bring up before we go to our last concept?
Yeah, no, those are all different ways I've seen. I do like, I think there is some value to the person, the individual, having some, as you put it, some skin in the game, because we don't value free things right? Even if they're not free, but if we spend our own money, or at least some portion of it, uh, I think it gives you a little more incentive.
Yep. That's why even if I had at the time had the money to buy my children their cars, that's not the way it works for our family. We co-sponsor you. For every dollar you raise, we give you $1 for your car up to a certain value, because they need to have some sense of the opportunity cost involved. And I think that's very true for education as well. Last thing, so important, need to celebrate the people in your organization who are chasing these things loudly. I prefer that the celebration be praise for the pursuit internally, meaning keep at it, you can do it. I know it's a difficult pursuit. I know that it's hard while you're still managing. I know it's difficult to set your life aside to study, et cetera. Encouragement along the path. And then the achievement becomes celebrated loudly. And you can decide what that means for your business. But promoting the fact that people in your business have bettered themselves professionally is a normal corporate sort of thing, right? And it's definitely needed in the wine and hospitality trade, just by nature of sort of, I don't know, it's not that people without certifications aren't qualified to do their jobs, but if somebody does have a certification, shouldn't we shout that from the rooftops? And there are different ways to do this. Speaking of the Angus barn, downstairs in the hallway to the wine cellar, which is a full floor and has a private dining room, there is a wall of honor. And every employee that still works for the Angus barn, and most people work there 12 plus years as servers on average retention, if they've gone through the CMS certification intro or certified, a copy of their accreditation is framed and hung on the wall, all of them. And they all wear their pins in the dining room to show that they have achieved this. And the Angus barn can promote it accordingly. That, yes, do we have a sommelier? We have lots of sommeliers. Matter of fact, your server is probably a sommelier in addition to being a server. So that is the end of my commentary. TJ, any other comments or questions?
Yeah, I hadn't heard that that wall of honor, because I was going to ask you, when is it appropriate? I mean, this isn't from the business perspective, it's the individual. When is it appropriate to wear a pin that you've earned? And also, not everybody is going to be a master sommelier or a master of wine, but all these certifications along the way are great, I think. And how can businesses let their customers know? I think that wall of honor idea is fantastic.
Yep, that was a great idea. I was one of those people who proudly wore my pin in all professional settings. And it wasn't because I was looking for the compliments or for people to stop and go, ooh, and ooh and ah over me. It was more there for people who knew what it was to know that they had a resource. And to be honest, I was proud of the accomplishment, and took a lot of effort to get each and every one of those pins along the way. And it was valuable. Now, as far as so you as an individual need to judge that, is what it boils down to. If you can wear it humbly, this is the important part. If you can wear your certification, if they have a pin or something, humbly, where you're not expecting people to ooh and ah over it, you're there as a servant, and this is a sign of your ability to serve, then wear it. If you can't wear it humbly, then don't wear it, and then question why you got the certification to begin with, to be honest. That said, I think that between social media and websites and internal, like inside the dining room, let's start with external. Social media and websites are the best place ever to talk about the talent that works in your dining room, if you're a restaurant or in your hotel or on your retail floor. And they're in the About Us and in our staff, most restaurants and most businesses have an About Us page on their website. It should include the people who have achieved things that are helpful to your client, and put them in there. Put a 1-sentence bio, and maybe it's the 1-sentence bio with their favorite region of the world that they want to talk about. Social media, once in a while, put a splash out from the people inside your organization who have certifications and allow them to be the voice of your business through your control, right? You control the message, yes, but you put their name associated with it, and why? Because of the certification that they carry, which benefits you and them and your guests. And lastly is inside, right? So if you're running a restaurant and somebody has a question about wine, the server may not be certified, or maybe they are, but they can always refer people, right? You know, it's like, I know a lot about the wine list, but that was a question I can't answer, but our sommelier can help you. He's a certified sommelier, and I'll go find him. Or, you know, you have that internal promotion of each other, I guess is what I'm talking about, where one person can refer somebody else on the team to the table. You know, my colleague, John, he's waiting tables in the other section. He just passed his sommelier certificate. I'm going to go ask him to come talk to you while I take care of something for him. You know, that sort of thing goes miles in the promotion of talent inside the dining room.
I love that. I'd love to see more of that. And I all things being equal, if I was trying to decide between, you know, a handful of restaurants of where I was going to go for the first time, and I saw a section with about us with different certifications and promoting that, that would definitely be my choice. I would go there.
Yeah, it definitely says something about the restaurant, that they're interested in progress, that they're interested in professionalism, and they're interested in their people because they're willing to promote their people. That's a huge thing. And then last but not least, you know, my experience is once I started passing certifications, every time we had any kind of like wine dinner or whatever, when our owner, who was the chef, would come out, he would always remind everybody in the room, hey, all of the wine was taken care of by my sommelier. And he would say it with this very sort of fatherly son pride in his voice, even if he was yelling at me later. Is like, my sommelier, Ron Edwards, you know, and he passed his test last month, or he passed his advanced exam. There's only, you know, 150 of those in the world now, blah, 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 whatever he had to say at the time, so that his customer base knew he had someone of talent level that they could lean on.
So on that note, question from David, do restaurants put any info or promotional language about their sommelier, wine steward, et cetera, on the menu or on the wine list? If not, should they? He does not recall ever seeing one.
My wine list did, because I worked in the Midwest where people didn't even know what it was half the time. And so they, you know, there was a certain amount of need to let people know that this resource was available. I think it's not, again, what's your motivation, right? So David, if your motivation is to make sure that your clients know they have a resource to ask questions, to give feedback, to whatever, and this is the person, then I think it's a great thing. If the reason someone's putting their name on the menu is out of personal pride and they're looking for pats on the back and praise, then that's the wrong reason to put it on the menu. But I think that I think that having a person's name attached to the menu offers also accountability. So if somebody comes in and they absolutely hate your wine program, they have somebody to tell. If somebody comes in and says, oh, I just love everything here, this is so interesting, they have somebody to tell. Because so many wine programs are anonymous. And David, if you start looking through my old pre-shift posts, poorly written or selfishly written, which is the same thing, where the only reason the wine list was put together was out of the interest of the person writing it, and they forgot all about the people who had to buy the wine. Somebody needs to be responsible for that, and anonymous wine lists don't offer that. So I'm a favor of putting them there for the right reasons, and making sure it's a resource. Obviously, when I got to the consulting world, I put my name on the wine list because I wasn't necessarily there every day. And if they had some questions about why the list was the way it was, they needed to know, you know, from the mind of whom did this come? And I would also offer some logic training behind what was on the list. And it also gave me the opportunity to make some symbols, TJ, you know, like little symbols from, you know, like little heart symbols or whatever, next to wines that I was particularly fond of, or that I knew would be difficult for people to order, so that they had some connection between, oh, the person who wrote this wine list really likes this wine. Maybe I'll try it.
Did you put your home phone number in case people
No.
wanted to call?
No, but often there was an email address. It just depends on how far you want to go. Great question. I hadn't even thought of that in this process.
Yes.
All right. I think we're probably, unless we're, are we good with questions, TJ? We're all good? We can.
Yeah, I think that was great.
Okay, fabulous.
Great questions, David. Thank you.
So here we have a big change. So those of you out there listening in the audience right now live, we're going to be moving these pre-shifts. We're not stopping pre-shift. We're just going to move it to a fully on demand. It'll be on YouTube for sure. We're looking at other platforms where it can be listened to audio without the slideshow. And that's the future, meaning from now on, when you get an email about pre-shift, it's going to be a link to where you can listen to it right now when it's convenient for you. Even though I love the live interaction and the questions, I think this is probably just more accessible to our audience to make it so that they can find it whenever they like. So that's why there's no date here. It's a process. I hope that in 2 weeks we'll have one going out by email to you that says, hey, here it is. But there's some obstacles that need to be dealt with, and make sure we're doing it the right way.
And Ron, when this is moved, how do our audience members stay in touch with us if they have questions, if they have comments?
Well, going forward, when you get a notification that, hey, there's a new pre-shift out, in that email, like all of you got an invitation from HubSpot, which is our mass communication device for the outside audience. They said, hey, pre-shift, and with the link to join and register and all that. We're going to do a similar thing. And in that, there will be a contact link that says, hey, if you have questions or what have you, click this link and send us an email. That has not been set up yet, so I cannot give them the address. Certainly at this point, they could email me at ron.edwards@winebow.com, but I'd like it to be a little more specific, and so that I know what the question's about.
Sure. So the questions will continue, and we'll get to hear all these great questions from people.
Yeah, and who knows, maybe one of these days I'll get around to inviting someone who's been a regular attendee and have a conversation with them about pre-shift and what their experience has been. That'd be fun. I've got a couple of people in mind that would be really great.
Wow, that's exciting.
I just thought of that.
That's a good idea.
All right. Well, sometimes my just thought of it's aren't good ideas. So maybe that's a good one. Maybe it's not. All right. So TJ, coming soon, we have another Bordeaux episode, right? The Bordeaux show next Tuesday.
Yes, the Bordeaux show is heading down the home stretch. Wrapping it up with a handful of remaining episodes, and next week it will be talking about viticulture in Bordeaux, how the Bordelais grow their grapes and how things have changed over the years and what they're currently doing. Very exciting.
Well, that's going to take a minute or two to talk about. That sounds
great. Short one,
2 episodes.
5 minutes.
I'm thinking that's 2 episodes, but we'll see what happens.
We'll see.
And to all of you who have attended pre-shift just regularly, and we do see a lot of the same names in the list of attendees. We're so appreciative of you as an audience, and we will continue to provide this to you. It'll just be whenever you'd like to find it. And remember, you can always review anything you missed on winebowyoutube.com playlist pre-shift. You can review the Bordeaux show on playlist The Bordeaux Show. And you can find wines that I've tasted and made video presentations on under Tasty Expectations. All kinds of stuff on Winebow YouTube.
Yeah, there's a lot of great videos. Someday I'm going to look up how many videos we have so we talk about it. I can say there are 157 videos. I don't know how many there are.
Well, you can ask our digital marketing department, and I'm sure they have a total for us.
So thank you, everybody, and we will see you in a different format, but we'll see you soon. And don't forget to tune into the Bordeaux show next week. That will still be live for the time being, and hope you have a great day.